They say the human body never truly lies. It whispers long before it screams. For some people, that whisper arrives as a stubborn tightening around the waist, the kind that makes jeans feel as though they've quietly shrunk overnight. For others, the whisper is more ominous, a doctor's sigh, a blood test that suddenly reveals a number that wasn't there before, or a strange fatigue that stalks even the most ordinary days. What most people don't realize is that one particular type of fat sits at the center of many of these whispers. Not the soft, pinchable fat under the skin, the kind people love to grab and complain about, but something deeper, hidden, far more cunning. Visceral fat. The fat you don't see. The fat that doesn't jiggle. The fat that quietly coils around your organs the way a vine climbs a tree. Except vines don't raise blood pressure or inflame your liver or interfere with your hormones. Visceral fat does. And at some point in their life, almost everyone asks the same question. How do I get rid of this? For real? Without starting a diet I'll abandon in 4 days. Without forcing myself into a routine that makes me feel punished rather than hopeful. Without feeling like I'm fighting my own biology? That question is how this story begins. Because hidden inside years of research, thousands of patient stories, and some of the most surprising scientific discoveries of the last decade are 7 methods, 7 practices, backed by real physiology that can finally push the body to release visceral fat. Not temporarily, not cosmetically, but fundamentally. Before we get into them, imagine this. A man sits in a doctor's office late in the afternoon. He is not obese. He's not unwell, at least not visibly. He jogs sometimes, eats what he considers pretty healthy. And yet his blood pressure has been inching upward. His waist has become thicker, almost firm. His energy evaporates earlier each day, like a phone battery that doesn't hold a charge anymore. The doctor explains that beneath that ordinary-looking belly is a layer of fat that behaves nothing like the rest. It doesn't just sit there. It acts like a secret metabolic factory, pumping out hormones and inflammatory substances. It's not about what you can see, she tells him. It's about what we can't. That image, silent biological sabotage, is why visceral fat is so dangerous and so misunderstood. But what most people never hear is the second half of the story. Visceral fat is also the most responsive fat in the human body. Lose the right amount of the right fat first? It's visceral. Change the right habits? Visceral fat is the first to shrink. Make the right small improvements? Visceral fat is the first to respond. And that leads to the first strategy. The glucose curve you didn't know you were riding. Picture a roller coaster. Not one of the impressive ones with loops and screams, but the small, deceptively innocent ones that still whip you around the corners just when you think you're safe. Your blood sugar does something similar for most people. The peaks and dips, the climbs and crashes, they happen all day long in the background, powered mostly by one thing: what you put in your mouth. A moment that changed researchers' understanding happened when a team tracked hundreds of people for days using continuous glucose monitors. They discovered something almost comedic. 2 people could eat the exact same food, a bowl of oatmeal, for example, and one person's blood sugar would climb gently, while the other skyrocketed like a fireworks finale. The second person wouldn't feel it, not immediately, but the body did. Because every time blood sugar spikes, insulin sweeps in to calm things down. And insulin's favorite place to store excess fuel is deep in the abdomen, around the organs, in that visceral fat compartment where trouble brews. This isn't about avoiding sugar like the plague. It's about smoothing the roller coaster. A smoother glucose curve means lower insulin levels, and lower insulin opens the door for visceral fat to finally leave. The trick, one of the simplest, most powerful, is eating food in a specific order. Vegetables first, proteins and fats second, carbohydrates last. A plate sequencing technique so strangely effective that many people notice changes within days. This single shift lowers post-meal blood sugar dramatically without changing what you eat, only the order. Two women in a clinical trial ate the same lunch. One started with a small salad. The other didn't. Their glucose responses looked like two completely different meals. The salad-first woman barely budged. The other soared. And here's the twist. Visceral fat reduction is tied not only to what you eat, but how violently your blood sugar rises, because visceral fat thrives in high insulin environments. Reduce the spikes. Reduce the fat. Vegetables first. It almost feels too simple, but the body loves simple. Imagine two men sitting at a coffee shop. Same age, same height, same weight. One has more muscle. Not huge, just more toned. The kind of subtle difference most people don't notice. One day, scientists measure their metabolic markers. The man with more muscle burns significantly more calories, even at rest, than the other. His insulin sensitivity is better. His inflammation is lower. His visceral fat levels, almost surprisingly, are lower as well. Why? Because muscle isn't just tissue. It's an endocrine organ, a chemical communicator. When activated, it sends out small signaling molecules called myokines that help regulate metabolism, inflammation, and fat breakdown. The more muscle you use, even briefly, the more myokines you release. And the fat that responds the fastest to these signals is, once again, visceral fat. This is why studies repeatedly show that even light strength training, as little as 15 minutes a couple times a week, reduces visceral fat more effectively than steady cardio alone. In one trial, participants who added resistance training to a walking program burned significantly more visceral fat than those who only walked, even though they burned fewer calories during the workouts. It's not about burning calories during the exercise, it's about the signals the exercise sends after. One woman, nearing 60, began doing push-ups at her kitchen counter. Half push-ups, leaning at an angle, 10 at a time. 3 weeks later, she noticed her waist felt different. Less firm in that blocks of packed clay way visceral fat often feels. She hadn't changed her weight at all. But her waist circumference dropped by 2 inches. Strength training may be the closest thing to a biological cheat code for visceral fat loss. A quick reminder, please like and subscribe this video. Thank you. Imagine cortisol, your stress hormone, as a fire alarm that never fully turns off. Ringing faintly in the background all day, during your commute, during frustrating conversations, during evenings where you collapse on the couch but feel strangely wired. The body can't distinguish between mental stress and physical danger. It reacts the same. And when cortisol stays elevated, even at low levels, the body becomes better at storing fat specifically in the abdomen. A researcher at Yale once described it like this: stress doesn't just make you gain weight. It tells the body where to store that weight. In one now famous study, women with high perceived stress levels stored dramatically more visceral fat than women with the same BMI but lower stress levels, even when diets were identical. The reason is ancient biology. Visceral fat is metabolically active. It is meant to provide quick energy for emergencies. If your brain perceives emergencies all day, it keeps that emergency fuel close to the vital organs. Primitive, but effective. Unfortunately, modern threats are not tigers. They are emails. The antidote is not the vague advice to lower your stress, which tends to make stressed people even more stressed. It's something more mechanical. Slow breathing. Studies show that slowing your breath to about 6 breaths per minute, 5 seconds in, 5 seconds out, lowers cortisol almost immediately. Not after a month. Not after a retreat in the mountains. Within minutes. Participants practicing this simple technique for 10 minutes a day showed measurable reductions in waist size after several weeks, even without changing anything else. It sounds laughable, and yet your body responds, because sometimes losing visceral fat isn't about willpower, it's about physiology. Yes, physiology. Some people eat perfectly balanced meals and still gain visceral fat. Why? The answer surprised even researchers. The clock. The human body is ruled by circadian rhythms. Master clocks in the brain, secondary clocks in nearly every cell. These clocks coordinate digestion, metabolism, hormone release, and fat storage. Eating late, especially late at night, disrupts these rhythms and shifts the body into a storage mode. In one study, 2 groups ate identical meals, same calories, same foods. One group ate earlier in the day. The other ate the same meals at night. The late eaters burned fewer calories, had higher insulin levels, and gained more visceral fat. Eating earlier, within a window of 8 to 10 hours, acts like flipping a metabolic switch. Without even cutting calories, people consistently lose visceral fat. One group in California saw a 3% reduction in visceral fat in a month, doing nothing but shifting food earlier. It's not starvation, it's scheduling. A man in his 30s tried this almost accidentally. He stopped eating after 7 p.m., not for health reasons, but because he noticed late-night snacking made him feel sluggish. A month later, his belt tightened. At first he blamed the washer-dryer. Surely clothes couldn't change that fast. But no, it was his waistline. Timing matters, more than we were taught. Timing. Here's a fact that shocks even people who consider themselves health-savvy. Sleeping 5 hours a night for just a week can alter genes associated with fat storage, hunger, and insulin sensitivity. In one study, adults restricted to short sleep gained visceral fat, even though their calorie intake didn't significantly change. Another trial found that 4 nights of poor sleep reduced insulin sensitivity so dramatically that some participants temporarily tested as pre-diabetic. Sleep is not rest. Sleep is metabolic regulation. Melatonin rises at night, signaling the body to repair. Growth hormone pulses in ways it doesn't during the day. Fat-burning pathways activate. Inadequate sleep shuts these off like a switch, forcing the body into a stressed, energy-conserving mode. And the body stores that conserved energy as visceral fat. But here's the twist that makes the story more hopeful. Improving sleep, even slightly, triggers the reverse effect just as quickly. People who extend their sleep by as little as 1 extra hour a night see measurable reductions in abdominal fat within weeks. One woman began lowering her bedroom temperature by 2 degrees each night. Cooler rooms encourage deeper sleep, and deeper sleep encourages better metabolic health. She didn't diet. She didn't exercise. But her visceral fat score, measured on a body scan, dropped after 6 weeks. Sometimes it's not about working harder. It's about shutting down properly. There are foods that fight hunger, foods that stabilize blood sugar, foods that lower inflammation, foods that feed the beneficial bacteria in your gut that help regulate how much energy you extract from food. And remarkably, these foods all belong to the same category: fiber-rich plants. Visceral fat is tightly related to inflammation and to the composition of the gut microbiome. When gut bacteria are fed fiber, they produce short-chain fatty acids that directly reduce fat storage, improve insulin sensitivity, and lower inflammation. In one study, increasing dietary fiber by just 10 grams per day, about 1 cup of vegetables, reduced visceral fat by 3.7% over 5 years without any other changes. But even more fascinating is the speed at which the gut microbiome can shift. as fast as 48 hours. One man added a cup of beans to his lunch for a month. His visceral fat dropped significantly, despite no change in weight. His microbiome had shifted. His inflammation markers fell. His insulin sensitivity improved. Fiber isn't glamorous. It doesn't trend on social media the way keto does, or intermittent fasting, or exotic supplements. But fiber is metabolism's oldest, most reliable ally. And visceral fat hates it. Here's a story that shocked researchers. A group of office workers wore glucose monitors and activity trackers. They were healthy adults, middle-aged, no major medical issues. But they sat for long periods. Scientists discovered that when these people sat for more than 60 to 90 minutes at a time, their metabolism slowed and inflammation rose, even if they exercised hard later in the day. Worse, prolonged sitting led to greater accumulation of visceral fat. This wasn't about laziness. This was biology responding to stillness. Then the researchers tried something simple. They had participants stand up every 30 to 45 minutes and walk, just for 1 or 2 minutes. That's all. 1 or 2 minutes. The results were outrageous. Blood sugar flattened, insulin dropped, inflammation dropped, and visceral fat began decreasing over the next months. Not from workouts, not from dieting, from micro-movement. A fast-paced walk around the house, marching in place, standing and stretching. These tiny movements act as metabolic resets. One man lost 2 inches around his waist in 8 weeks. His friend, who had been killing himself with long cardio sessions, was furious until he tried it himself. And when he did, he saw the same shift. Sometimes the small changes are the ones that finally stick. The human body prefers consistency over intensity. A sprinkle of movement all day is more impactful to visceral fat than any single burst of discipline. And now, the real secret tying all 7 together. Visceral fat doesn't respond to punishment. It responds to signals. Lower glucose spikes. Signal the body that fuel is available, not overflowing. Build a little muscle. Signal the body to burn, not store. Calm your stress response. Signal safety, not danger. Eat earlier. Signal alignment with circadian rhythms. Sleep more deeply. Signal restoration, not depletion. Eat more fiber. Signal balance, not chaos. Move throughout the day. Signal activity, not stagnation. When the signals align, visceral fat dissolves. And here's the part that surprises almost everyone. The body wants to let it go. That fat isn't even meant to be long-term storage. It's meant to be temporary. But modern life confuses the system. Constant stress, late nights, processed foods, sitting too long, eating too fast, eating too late. Correct the environment, and the fat follows. Imagine yourself 6 months from now waking up lighter. Not necessarily in weight, but lighter in pressure. Waking up with a clearer mind, with calmer hunger, steadier energy, deeper breaths. With a body that feels less like it's working against you and more like it's cooperating. These 7 methods aren't dramatic. They don't require suffering. They require understanding. They require tuning the body back to its original instructions. Vegetables first. Lift a little. Breathe deeper. Eat earlier. Sleep longer. Add fiber. Move often. Small steps, powerful signals. And little by little, the hidden fat, the dangerous fat, the fat you never signed up for but somehow acquired through the chaos of modern life, begins to melt away, quietly, steadily, reliably. That's not hope, that's biology. And biology, when respected, always responds. Please like and subscribe if you enjoyed this video. And thank you for watching.